video tutorial on the MLS Property Type Condo Townhouse form. This form is also known as the Exhibit A to the exclusive right to sell. If you have an exclusive right to sell listing agreement that you're filling out, you also need to do the MLS Property Type form for that particular property that you're going to be listing. So if you look at the exclusive right to sell contract, on page 3 of the contract, at the very bottom, you'll notice it says, seller acknowledges receipt of a complete copy of this listing contract and attached Exhibit A. A lot of times people don't know what this Exhibit A is because it doesn't say exactly what Exhibit A is. It might say this right here, but it doesn't really give that much information. So that's why we're putting it in this tutorial to explain to you that when you are doing a listing agreement that you have to attach the property type form and have your seller sign it as well. These two items are required for inputting your listing into the MLS. Okay, so here we are on the property type condo townhouse form. I also have a video tutorial on the single family home. This is all to do with a condo or townhouse. Okay, so as you start getting ready to fill this out, you're going to be visiting several different areas for research. I have another video tutorial on all the property research, so I'm just going to kind of go in and out of those places, but I'm not going to really show you exactly how to use it because I do have another video for it. But probably by watching me go through these different websites, you'll get a good grasp of how to use those programs to find information. Excuse me. Okay, so starting with our TMK number, and let's say you just got a phone call from a client that wants to list their property and you're just now in the beginning stages of filling out the paperwork to go meet with them to sign a listing agreement. And maybe all you have is like an address, or maybe you just have a name or something. So let's say we start off with a name or an address. I typically use two different public record websites. One is called RealList, which is another part of the matrix system, and I also use Hawaii Information. And as we go through this, you're going to see why I like to use two different websites, because there might be some information found on one website that can't be found on another. So just as I toggle through these two different websites, you'll kind of get an idea of why I do that. Okay, so I'm going to start with RealList because that's probably the one that you're most familiar with, and I've already pulled up my information by putting in the address of the property. So once I put in the address of the property, it pulls up the full profile of the property and all of the public record information for that particular property. So as you see here, I have my address up here, and I have my unit number, the zip code, and then if you look down here, you'll see bedrooms and baths, square footage, year built, and condo type, that sort of thing. And as you scroll down here, there's a lot of other information that's going to be handy. We'll need the tax assessed values. We're going to need to know what the taxes are. We're going to need to know like zoning and things like that. So one of the other things I like to do right as I get into the RealList public record, and I just passed it, sorry, is I want to look up the old MLS number. So all of these highlighted information have their own set of information. So what I want to do is I want to go down and find the listing information. And I know I passed, there it is. Okay, listing information. I want to pull up the old MLS sheet because this property type form that we're filling out is actually a data entry form for the person who's going to be loading your listing into the MLS matrix system. So anytime you're like looking through matrix and you're pulling up a listing, all of the data that's on that listing sheet is derived from this form that we're about to fill out. So what I like to do is go find the old MLS when it was listed before, and that will tell me a lot of information that I can just kind of copy and paste onto my new data sheet. And just want to warn you that if you are going to be doing that, just keep in mind that if you pull up an old MLS that may be 2-3 years old, that type of thing, like maybe your client bought it 3 or 4 years ago and now they're selling it, they may have done a lot of things to the house that may change the information that you will find on an old MLS sheet. So for example, this highlighted number here is an MLS number. I'm going to click on that, and that will pull up the records of every single time it was ever listed for this property. So these are all the MLS numbers that ever were for this particular condominium unit number. So although it's active right now because it's my listing, I'm going to show you what it looked like before. So I'm going to pull up an old listing number, and this happened to be withdrawn, and this was withdrawn very recently, so a lot of the information in here is going to be somewhat current, but you might not have that situation. So I just want to make sure that I put it out there that although you're pulling up an old listing to kind of copy some information, you want to make sure that anything that may have changed from the time that they bought it to now, you want to make sure you put in the current information. And as we go through this, I'll kind of explain what some of those things might be. All right, so as you can see here, I've got a lot of information. I've got square footage, I've got bedrooms and baths. You might want to note the elementary school, middle school, and high school, because this might be something that you don't know and you might want to have for your file for when you're filling out the profile sheet. But again, all of these items here, all of these fields anyway, will be on this property profile sheet. Okay, so now that I've kind of showed you a little bit about how to get to a public record to get you started, let's start with working on the sheet itself. And then as I come across something that may not necessarily be found on that website, can go to a different website, I'll be toggling in between a bunch of different places that you can get information that you may not necessarily know. Or it maybe wasn't on the prior sheet, or maybe you don't even have an old MLS to look at. You're just doing this for the first time. Okay, so let's start off with TMK number. So this would be something you definitely can get from your MLS sheet. And by the way, I've just toggled into Hawaii Information Service. So this is another public record website that I like to use. And I like to have both of them open so that in case I can't find my information on the real list form, I can toggle over to Hawaii Information. So again, Hawaii Information gives me TMK number, address, bedrooms and baths, information about the condo that I'm going to need. So I got my TMK number. Now I'm going to go back to my zip forms and plug in the TMK number. Also, if you wanted to just print this stuff out and have it with you on the side rather than toggling back and forth, you can do that also. Listing agent MLS ID number. This is your MLS ID that you log into Matrix with. So that everything about you is connected to that ID number. Once this gets plugged into the Matrix system, it will automatically populate your name, your telephone number, your email address, all that goes along with your ID number. Now MLS number, I really don't know why it's on here. It's not a required field, and also you don't really get an MLS number till you load it into the MLS anyway, so I would just bypass this. Once you've loaded the listing into the MLS or you get an MLS number, then you can go back in and either plug it in here or just jot it down on your printout. And I might as well go ahead and inform you that anything that you see that is highlighted, bolded, and has an asterisk next to it is a required field. So if you leave something like that blank and you turn it in to review@elitepacific.com when you try to get approval for it before you go to see your client, it may get rejected. So make sure that you do fill something in for every single bolded and asterisk item in this form. Okay, so now we're going to go over co-listing agent MLS ID. So if you are co-listing this with another agent in the office, you're going to want to put their MLS ID number there as well. And note that it is not required, but if you do have a co-listing agent, you definitely should put that in there. List price. This, of course, will be the price that you're going to be listing the property for. And as you see here, I've kind of arrowed over it and it's popped up a window that gives me some information about what to plug in there. And it tells me, that it's already pre-coded for dollar signs, commas, and periods, so you don't need to worry about plugging that information in. And it tells you how many characters you're allowed to put into that box, and that's kind of is the case with every single box that's in here. So what I want to do is, let's say I'll put in a $2 million 2.5 million dollar property. It's going to automatically calculate that with the dollar sign, commas, and periods. Okay, land recorded. This is when you took your real estate school and when you learned about the land court system and you learned about regular system. We need to find out what type this property is, and there are couple different ways that you can find that information out. You could go back to the matrix system and pull up your CMA of all of the listings. Like I did that a minute ago here. I pulled up all of the listings that are in this building that I'm about ready to list in, and I pulled up one that's already active, and I can kind of steal some information from here. So for example, if I wanted to know what they put in for land recorded, I can go here and see that they put in dual systems. Now, if you don't know, or if you are worried that that may not be correct, again, that's something that you can get from your research screen. So going back to the Hawaii Information or Realist, if you were to look down in the sales history of all of the recorded sales closings, you'll notice there are certain acronyms here. If you see the acronym TCT, that will tell you right away that it is land court. And I don't know the exact wording for it. I think it's the Torrance something system. And then LCD says that stands for land court document. That's definitely is a land court system. If you see DOC anywhere in here, then you know that it's a regular system. So if I see DOC and TCT LCD, I'm going to determine that that's a dual system. Most of the time you're only going to see one type. It's either going to be DOC or TCT, or you're going to see LCD in there. But again, these two are together, land court, and DOC is regular. So that is another way to determine that. Okay, so we would go back to our zip forms and go ahead and plug in the land recorded. Now this one already has the information in the drop-down menu, and you would just simply select dual system. And some of the items here you have to actually type it in yourself, but like zip form does for the purchase contract and anything else that you do in zip forms, once you've typed something in there, it will automatically save it. So if you've done something in here, typed it several times, and you click the drop-down menu, it will show you everything that you've ever typed in before, so maybe to save you a little bit of time. Okay, listing type. There are two different types. One is exclusive right to sell, and one is exclusive agency. I'm not going to cover exclusive agency because you're probably never going to have that, and if you do end up having that, you're probably going to know what it is anyway, and you would just put in EA. So most of the time you're just going to put in exclusive right to sell, which is the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Listing date, the date of your listing. If you click in this field, you're going to notice a calendar window pop up, and unfortunately it didn't do it because I was in here before and I actually accidentally hit the space bar. When you do hit the space bar in some of these fields, it turns into a text field. So I just need to delete that out there, and then it should turn back into a calendar box. There we go. So I just gave you a little bit of a tip. So if you are wanting to hand type something in somewhere, if you just hit the space bar, it deletes the coding for that field and it becomes a text box, and you can type whatever you want in there. Okay, so it's supposed to pop up a calendar window, and you just simply click your date and it should just pop right in. And the same thing goes for listing expiration date. It becomes a calendar, and then again you would change the year to whatever the previous year is and plug that date in. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of get out of that. Compensation. This is the amount that you're going to pay a cooperating broker. So don't confuse this with the actual commission that the whole company is going to get. If your listing agreement says 6% paid to the listing broker, you don't want to put the 6% here. This is what you're going to offer to a cooperating broker. So if you're going to give cooperating broker half of your commission, then you would take 6% divided by 2 and put 3% into this field. And this would be something that you would have to put in manually. It might have a drop-down menu. Oh, I guess this one doesn't have it. So you just have to plug that in. Compensation subject to, if you've got a lender who is dictating the commission, or a court that's dictating the commission, you definitely want to make sure that you notate that here. Dual variable compensation, if you've got I guess a differential with the commission, whether the seller is going to agree to pay you 2% but wants you to pay the cooperating broker 3%, then your dual variable would be yes or no depending on the situation. And by the way, some of these items are not they're not highlighted or bolded or asterisked, then they are not required and you don't actually have to fill it out. So if you're not sure, you can go ahead and bypass it. Okay, so now we're going to cover show internet. This field, if you were to put in show internet yes, you need to be aware that by saying yes to this, that once the listing has hit the MLS once it's been entered into the matrix system, it will automatically go out to all websites that have IDX. If you don't know what IDX is, that's what the Board of Realtors allows a company like our company, Coldwell Banker, Prudential, some of the bigger sites out there like Realtor.com and things like that, where they can actually pull raw data from the MLS database. So all of our listings that appear on the MLS system will appear on all of these other websites. If you put yes here, your listing will show up on Coldwell Banker site, Prudential, and all of that. So you just need to make sure that your seller is aware that this listing is going to appear on many different websites. If your client, sometimes a client may not necessarily want their listing to be on the internet. Maybe they're private. It could be a multi-million-dollar home that the seller just wants you to market to your own pool of clients, or like a pocket listing or something like that, but they don't want it actually listed on the MLS, or they don't want it out there. If you are going to be listing this and your client says, I don't want it to show up on the internet and I don't want you to do a lot of marketing, you can still put it into the MLS so that other realtors can see it, but it will not show up on the internet. So you wouldn't see this anywhere on the internet. It would just be on our MLS system. If you put no, then like I said, it's not going to show up anywhere. The next box over is one that maybe your seller might be willing to do if they're asking you not to advertise it on the internet, which is show address on the internet. Maybe they're willing to let you advertise the listing on the MLS, but they might want to have you suppress like the address, or well, what will happen is if you choose show address no, then the actual number part of the address won't appear on the internet. So like if you've got like Portlock Road, no one's going to know which house it is. So that might be an alternative for your seller if you're having trouble with, explaining to him, that you can't market the house unless it's on the internet, so that you can get those leads. He might be willing to do this where he'll allow you to put it on the internet as long as you suppress the address. On some websites it will say just the neighborhood if you put show address no. But if you do put the address, if you do select yes, it will show the address. Another reason is that people may not want looky-loos coming up to their door and asking questions and that sort of thing. So it's kind of up to you how you want to handle that. Okay, is there going to be a lockbox on the property? If so, then you would just simply click yes, or choose no if you're not. And if you do choose yes, then I would probably recommend that you not put a serial number if you have the central lock, because you want to be able to take the calls and be able to give out the lockbox instructions, just so that you have, like when somebody calls you and says they want to show the property, you'll be able to log their name and number for your protection list, and you don't want random people just kind of going at, even though it's vacant, you don't want people just going and plugging in their information without calling you first. So I wouldn't put any kind of serial number here. You can always say yes, there's a lockbox, but don't give any instructions except to call you. Okay, so the next area here is the address information, which is pretty self-explanatory. Street number, street name, street suffix would be the boulevard, circle, street, that sort of thing. City, zip, and then of course a unit number. So you want to definitely make sure you put the unit number there. Elementary school, middle school, and high school. This can all be ascertained from an old MLS printout, or you can go to the matrix system, pull up a listing that's currently being listed, and look up the school information there. If it's the first time you're listing this and you don't know where to go to get the school information, there is a number that you can call. I don't have it quite handy, but let's see if I can look it up here on my other computer. I'll give you a number here. Let's see. You want to call the district for that particular district for the schools. So if you want to jot this down, if you want to verify the schools, you can go to the Honolulu district. The telephone number is 733-4952. Central District Office is 627-7478. The Windward District Office is 233-5700, and the Leeward District Office is 692-8000. So if you are not sure what the schools are and you don't have anything to go by, you can call one of those district offices to verify what school is in the neighborhood of your listing. Okay, so let's go back to Real List. Sorry, not Real List, but Zip Forms. And now we're on the property information part here. So what we want to do here is go back to our Real List, and we've got 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And you just plug that in there. And of course, if there's a half bath, you would put that. What floor is this on? You might be unit 1005, but maybe there's a floor that was designated for like a mezzanine or maybe the pool or something. And although you're on the 10th floor, you're really like on the 13th floor. Depending on whatever that is, you just want to make sure you put the correct floor number there. Are you going to offer the property furnished? If so, you're going to check off whether it's fully furnished, you're going to negotiate the furnishings, or there's a partial furniture, like maybe like a sofa set or something like that, but not quite everything in the house. Is this a new development? There might be like a new subdivision, like a Gentry Homes type of a townhome complex that's brand new, and maybe you're doing the first one in there. Then you would put yes, and of course, if it's not a new development, you put no. Year built. You want to make sure you put in the year built, and you can get that information also from looking at Real List, year built, or the other Hawaii Information Service, which you'd find on the second page, year built. Okay. Parking total. So if you've got 1 covered parking and 1 open assigned, that sort of thing, you would count all of the parking stalls that is going to be sold with this unit. So the number of parking would go here, and of course you would number them where it says parking stall. So parking stall 100, 102, that sort of thing. Fractional, okay, this is an old, well, it's still kind of in place right now. Some people still do these fractional ownership type of thing. It's kind of like a timeshare situation. If you have a fractional ownership situation, then of course you're going to know, and you will put that yes here. But I very highly doubt that you're going to have those type of transactions, because they're far and few between now. But if you do have that situation, then of course you want to make sure you disclose that. Is the property remodeled? Is it a full remodel? Is it a partial remodel? You just want to select the appropriate one. What year was it remodeled? You want to make sure you put in the year that it was remodeled. Square footage, open lanai, land square footage. Land square footage is not as important as, of course, the living area, but you might have a townhome that has a nice size yard, and you can always get the land square footage from the CPR map. If you're dealing with a subdivision with an actual townhome with a parcel of land. Because a lot of times when you're just looking up the development, you're going to get one massive land square footage for the entire project. So you'd have to figure out the proportion there that you need to divide up to get your actual land square footage for that property. And you should probably be able to get that from the CPR map. But going back to square feet living area, open lanai, you can get that from Real List. Here's the MLS square footage for this condo, and then again, if you go to the Hawaii information, that should also be on the top of the page. So see 649 square feet there. So let's go back to our zip forms, and now we are looking at, we'll put in our square footage information, and then move along to elevators. If you're not sure, it's not highlighted, so you don't need to fill anything here, but number of elevators could be important to somebody, so it might be a good idea to try to find out how many elevators are in the building. Some buildings have 2 elevators, some buildings have 4, so you can ask this of the management company, or obviously by visual inspection of the property. Flood zone, that information, flood zone and zoning can also be ascertained from the Hawaii Information website. And you find that out by scrolling on the second page here. You've got zoning, apartment precinct, and you've got flood zone AO. Now, this doesn't give me a number, but I don't know if I have enough space to put that in there, so I might go check this out on the Realist site and get a different code for that zoning, which I do have a different code here, which is UX212. So this will probably be auto-filled by the person who's putting in your listing, so not too big of a deal, but you still have to fill out the form. So when you get to that section, you're going to want to put in zoning here, and it doesn't have a drop down menu of anything to choose from, but I've already typed it in before, so I'm going to select it, and then it kind of skipped over here. Flood zone was AO, which does have a drop down menu. That's what I meant to do first, sorry. And you just choose that and it will pop in. If you want to put the developer architect information here, maybe there is a well-renowned architect, or if you just want to put in, Schuler Homes or Eva by Gentry, you can type that in here. Just simply type it in. If you've got like a specific model, some development projects have several different types of models, and maybe one model is more desirable over another. You might want to put the model name here. Building name, of course, you're going to want to put the name of the building, which, in my case, it's Hale Moani. And then, of course, we get down here to the zoning, so we already did that. And the management company information. So let's say, for example, you don't know the management information, or maybe you've already found that out, you go ahead and plug it in. But if you don't know and you're looking it up, you can go back to the MLS, look at one of the listings that's already there, and if you scroll down to where it shows the maintenance fees, you'll see it'll say Hawaiian Properties, Management Company Hawaiian Properties, and then a telephone number. But you probably already have this by now if you've got all this information to input, but that is another way that you can tell how to find the property management company. Let's see, okay, then you would put the management company information here. The owner occupancy percentage, again, you get that from the management company. Maintenance fees, this again, something that you would get from the management company. Any association fees or any other monthly fees. There might be a monthly fee that, like an assessment of some sort, like let's say it's like $500 a month, an assessment that the building has assessed each property owner. If there was any other fee, you would want to make sure that you put it here. If the property is getting rental income, you might want to put that there because maybe that's desirable for an investor who might want to keep the tenant. And I kind of skipped over it, but this home exemption here, I want to explain this a little bit. When you're going to be putting in the tax amount, so we're going to be filling that out down here, this home exemption is tied into the tax amount, and it's also tied into this assessed values. So when the city and county assess a property, they give it a property assessment amount, and they're taxed on that amount. Whatever you're being taxed could very well be reduced if you have a home exemption. So let's say I'm a married couple, generally are about $80,000, and maybe a military person who is also handicapped, their home exemption goes up. So I don't know if you remember from your real estate school, they talked to you about home exemptions and who is eligible for home exemption. So there's several different tiers of eligibility, and it starts at like 25,000, goes to 80,000, goes to 125,000. So depending on your exemption, and how you would find this out is by looking at your property research public report information, and this is Hawaii information. You would go to the top here where it shows you all the assessed values, and then you've got exemption here. Now this says 0, so we don't have a home exemption here, but let's say you saw 125,000 or you saw 80,000. Whatever exemption that is, the city and county is going to take that amount and subtract it from your total assessed value, and then they will tax you on that number. So the higher the exemption, the lower your taxes are going to be. And why that's important for somebody looking at your listing is, let's say they're looking at the monthly taxes, and the taxes, let's say, are $500 a month. Okay, because you're going to take that I'll show it to you, that annual tax, and divide it by 12, and you're going to get a monthly fee. And that is where you would fill in over here the tax amount monthly. Okay, so whatever this amount is after you've calculated it out monthly, and let's just say, for example, it's $500, a person's going to immediately go over here and look at the home exemption. If the home exemption is 0, then they're going to know that that's the max of taxes that someone would pay. So if it's an investor, this will be something that they'll be looking at paying. If they are themselves eligible to 125,000 home exemption, they will then tell themselves that this tax amount would then be lower when they purchase the property. So it's a good idea to make sure that you check that home exemption, and it's required anyway, so you have to put it. And then I just showed you where to get the tax assessed values, which this would be your land, this would be your building, and this would be your total. So you would take all this information and bring it over to your zip forms. Now, another reason why I like to show you two different public record websites is that Realist is a little bit behind Hawaii Information Service. So if you go down and you look at the tax assessed values from Realist, they're all from 2013. So this is old, and Hawaii Information is updated with the 2014 assessed values. This is the one you want to use because it's the most current. Okay, so that's another good reason why we like to show you two different websites. Okay, so now we're looking at so then you would put in the tax assessed value year, which would be 2014. Land tenure, probably most of the time you're going to be dealing with fee simple property, and I don't need to really explain fee simple. You should know that already. And you should also know what leasehold property is, but just as going over it real quickly here, leasehold is when a person is buying the actual property. They're not buying the land that it sits on. So if you buy something that's leasehold, it's almost like renting the property. So you're going to buy an interest in the property, but then you're going to be charged a lease rent, and there is a period of time that lease is available, and you would fill out all of the information here pertaining to the lease. And again, this would be information you would get from the property manager. Okay, if the fee purchase was available, so if someone wanted to purchase the fee to make it a fee simple property, you want to make sure you put in the fee simple the purchase price. So you may have like a leasehold purchase for $100,000, but the fee purchase price is $100,000. So you put it together, the property's worth $200,000. So you see how that works. Now we're moving on to public remarks and agent showing remarks. Okay, these are two completely separate fields that get plugged into the matrix system. So public remarks will obviously go out to the public. So anything you put in here is going to be seen by thousands of people, millions of people. And so you want to make sure you don't violate any fair housing laws with any words that you use. And you also don't want to violate MLS rules and regulations by putting in your name and your telephone number. The name and telephone number are already going to be on your listing by way of putting in your MLS ID. So remember when we were talking about your MLS ID here, that will automatically fill in all the information that belongs to you in this area right here. So your name, your telephone number, your office number, your email address, all that will automatically fill in by putting in your listing agent ID. So you don't need to put it in the public remarks. Now, although when someone sends your listing out, they're probably going to do what they call a customer report or a customer printout, and when someone does that, it's going to not show all of your information on it, because they want, of course, you wouldn't want to send a listing to your client with that's coming through your email and all your information, and you wouldn't want another agent's information to show up anywhere, because you wouldn't want your client to be calling the other agent for anything. So that's why it's really prohibited not to put your information, your telephone numbers, and your name in the public remarks. This is just here for your description, how to describe the property, and you have a specific amount of characters. And they have increased it. I don't know if you're aware, it used to be 400 characters, now it's 600, which now you can really showcase your listing in the best light with your description. The agent showing remarks are reserved specifically for contacting you, anything specific that you want another agent to know, like how to maybe where to park when you come to view the property. Maybe you want to give them instructions like call another number to or to email you, any kind of instructions that you want to give another agent that pertains to showing the property. The public remarks is everything that the public is going to see, and this section here is for agent eyes only. So again, when the agent sends the listing to a client, this information would not show up. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to page 2 of the property type sheet here. And this would be all of the features of the property. So again, a lot of this stuff is going to be from visual inspection, and if you're stuck on something, you can always go back to the matrix, pull up all of the listings in that building, and kind of go through their remarks and features. Like let's say, for example, you've got amenities, community laundry, pool, resident manager, that sort of thing. That's all stuff that's going to be helpful when you're filling out the feature section here. Some of this stuff can also be ascertained from the public record system as well. So kind of go through this a little bit quick, because most of it's going to be just select whatever applies through each one of these boxes. But I want to also point out too that every one of these categories here is a searchable field. So you got to make sure that you do select everything that applies, because that one box could be searchable for a buyer. Like if they wanted to single out those that have ocean view, those that have marina frontage, that sort of thing. You want to make sure that you check all that apply, because all of these items here are searchable fields in the matrix system, as well as the first page, all of those fields that we were filling in, they're all searchable fields. Okay, so we'll just kind of go through it, and if it's a self-explanatory, I'm just going to skip it. I'm going to blow this up too so we can see it a little bit better. Open that up and scroll back down to page 2. And we've got special sale conditions. So if your client is going through a bankruptcy, foreclosure, or short sale, that's what this section talks about. If there's any kind of condition to the sale of the property, you need to make it known here. If you don't have this situation, then you would just simply check none. The terms acceptable, this is what the seller is willing to accept as far as like how the buyer is going to pay for the property. Basically, he'll take cash. Obviously, cash is king, so that will almost never be a problem. So you would check cash for sure, because you're definitely going to accept cash. And conventional, so conventional mortgage. All of these other items here are a little bit more tricky, and maybe a seller doesn't want to deal with anything else but cash and conventional. Those are the two that we would most commonly choose. But maybe you have a seller that's willing to do financing, so you can check off seller financing in that case. Perhaps they're willing to do an agreement of sale. You would check that off. Whatever the seller is willing to accept is what you would check. Possession, when does the seller want to turn over the property to a buyer? Maybe he needs to wait a little while to give a tenant their notice, that sort of thing. You're going to want to make sure that you explain to a buyer what your thought process is with regard to turning over the property. So typically we would choose at closing. So if your offer comes in and it's a 45-day closing, it's going to close in 45 days. So if you have a tenant, you don't want to put yourself in a pickle with the timing. You would pretty much want to put 45 days or more, or at least choose 45 days or less to allow that 45-day period to happen. And then again, if it's subject to a rental lease, you would choose that. So any one of these things, whichever would apply. Perhaps there's something else, like maybe it needs to be a 60-day closing. You can choose other, and then explain that to the buyer agent. So disclosures, again, anything that's in here that would apply, you would check it. Obviously, you should have a property disclosure statement, so that will be something that's basic and something that you would definitely want to check off. The style of the condo, whether it's a high-rise, condotel, co-op, that sort of thing, you would just check off whatever applies. If you're not sure, then again, you can see at the top of the listing what another company may have done was they would have chosen, let's see, it's supposed to be up here somewhere, yeah, property type condo townhouse. So you would choose whichever one works. Construction exterior finish, this can be found on the public record. Let's see, I was just here, concrete, masonry, plasterboard, all this information right here. You've got some more information over here too, style, condo. So some of the information can be found here on the Hawaii information site or also within Real List. Okay, let's see, property condition, just check whichever one applies. Floor covering, visual inspection, you will be able to tell what kind of flooring there is, or you might need to ask your client. Amenities, again, these are things that can be found from the MLS sheet, so you would just go through this list and check all that apply. You can also call the management company and get this information, or the resident manager. Unit features, check all that apply. Occupancy, like I had mentioned in the single family video that I did, even though the property may be vacant or owner occupied, I typically like to leave it blank so that people will call me. Obviously, if you choose vacant, you're going to get a lot of calls. The reason why is because when I set up showings, I've got a buyer and I'm out showing property, and I've got like 2 days that I'm working with setting up showings. What I would typically do is go print out a list of everything that's available that I want to show in that neighborhood, and let's say I have about 20 listings. I'm going to sort through them and choose all the ones that are vacant on lockbox because they're easier to show. And then what I do is then I start calling owner occupied properties, and then last on the list would be tenant occupied. So if I want people to call me, I don't want to check off that it's tenant occupied or owner occupied. Maybe I can work with my tenant to get somebody in quickly. I don't want to keep agents from calling me by checking off these boxes. So checking off vacant if your property is vacant is definitely probably fine, but if you're working with an owner occupied property or a tenant occupied property and you don't want your page to go to the bottom of the pile, you want to make sure that you might want to leave it blank or something. Okay, so next we're talking about view. Again, I want to stress that things are searchable in the matrix system based on whatever you plug in here. So you want to check everything that you can possibly check. So if you've got an ocean view and you've got a sunrise view, you definitely want to check off both, because if somebody's just searching for ocean, you want to make sure that yours shows up on the list. Maybe you might have forgot to put sunrise, but maybe that was something that was really important to a buyer, to have to wake up every morning to a beautiful sunrise and you didn't check it, and that was one of their criteria that was in their search criteria, then your listing wouldn't show up. Again, with when we get to frontage, that would be another reason to do that as well. Parking, again, if you put in 4 parking places up on the first part of this property type form, you're going to be able to explain it here. So if you put in 4, you can check carport, covered, open one, guest, garage, whatever the case is with that particular condo unit. Property frontage, this would be another case where if you have ocean frontage, you also want to choose waterfront, depending on how this person's going to be doing searching, or maybe an agent setting up a prospect for their client may not necessarily choose ocean, they may just choose waterfront. So if you didn't choose waterfront but you just chose ocean, you're not going to show up in that list. So choose everything that applies just to make sure that you expand that search spectrum. Okay, now we're going to go to other monthly fee. So this is where I was talking about too. If you've got a maintenance fee, but then you also have a marina fee, you can explain it here by checking the appropriate box. And then, like if there was a special assessment, you would want to check that as well. Maintenance fee includes, this is very important to a buyer to know, especially if those maintenance fees are high, what's included in that maintenance fee. So check all that apply. Inclusions, this is probably one of the most important things. Just simply go through everything. This will probably help if you look at other listings, and then also from visual inspection or contacting your management company. This is also important if there's something within the unit that the seller does not want to sell with the property, like maybe they have a sentimental attachment to a chandelier, or maybe they have they love the ceiling fans that they bought and they want to take out all the ceiling fans and we're going to replace them with maybe lighting or something. This is important to make sure you check it off here, because if you don't, you can rest assured that the buyer is going to put it into the contract, and if you don't say something about it, you could end up buying ceiling fans for the buyer or chandeliers. Okay, showing information. This again kind of ties in a little bit with that occupancy, where you want to try to make it as desirable as possible to show your property. So the more restrictive you are with the showing, the less chance you're going to get calls for showings, because again, like I say, when I'm rushing to get, I got a buyer who wants to go see property and I'm trying to get it done within a 1 or 2 day time frame, I'm going to show the stuff that's easy to show. So if you got 45-day notice, appointment only, that type of thing, it's going to be really difficult for people to show your property unless you really do have a really hot property. But if there's tons of listings on the market and you're just one in a million, yours is probably going to go to the bottom of the list. So choose wisely when you're going through this. Stories, however many stories in the building. Security, you're going to check off all that apply. If it's got a security keyed elevator, that type of thing, you're going to want to make sure you check off the right box. The last page of the MLS property type sheet is where you can describe rooms within the condo. Depending on what kind of a condo you have, maybe you have a really beautiful 4-bedroom condo, or maybe you've got a wonderful townhome that you want to describe some of the rooms within the condo. And then you've got several boxes here for several different rooms, and what will happen is whatever your room is, you are able to describe here a very nice description of that room. And so what will happen is on your matrix, it's going to probably appear somewhere in here. And just to kind of give you an idea of, I don't know if it has ever happened to you where you've printed out a MLS sheet, it's on 8.5 by 11 paper. Sometimes the information continues on to a second page. So all of the information that you put in here, even though you have put a lot, every time you add more information, it pushes down the information on that page. So the more information that you put on your listing, the more it's going to push down and end up appearing on a second page. So just to let you know that you might end up having, instead of an 8.5 by 11 sheet, one sheet, you're going to have 2 sheets, and anyone printing out your listing is going to be printing out 2 sheets of paper. So I just thought I'd mention that. It sort of annoys me sometimes when I'm printing out MLS. I do a search on something, I get like 10 listings and I print them all out and half of them are 2 pages. It just gets a little frustrating and wastes a lot of paper. So that concludes our video tutorial on the MLS property type condo townhouse form.